Welcome to Margin for Mission, the CRI Cape and Krause podcast, where two friends, Ken and Chris, bring you real talk about creating space for what matters most. Because when your organization has financial and operational margin, you can focus on your mission with confidence.
We're professionals who've spent years helping churches, higher education institutions, and other mission-focused nonprofit organizations manage their accounting, tax, compliance, and other challenges. We understand the complexities you face, and we're here to make it simpler.
In each episode, we'll dive into practical insights on leadership, operations, and the everyday challenges of running a nonprofit without the jargon.
And we'll talk about life, too. Family, faith, quite a bit of football, and finding balance in a world that rarely slows down.
So whether you're managing budgets, leading teams, or just trying to keep your mission moving forward, you're in the right place.
This is Margin for Mission. Let's get started.
Well, welcome back to another podcast episode of Margin for Mission. Chris, so good to see you again, my friend.
Likewise, man. Likewise. It's already been pretty exciting, like just getting on the podcast. Like we got a storm brewing here in Terre Haute, Indiana. Might kick my power off. Who knows? We've been talking about life in the wilderness, in the woods for the Tan family.
Yep.
Which is always exciting. Always something new happening.
Boy, it's one of those things that, especially when we were thinking about moving to a little bit more of the country, how much more we learn about how life is out in the country. We may expand on that one day, right?
Yeah. Red and tooth and claw.
Yeah. Well, as you can tell, I have a virtual background because we're still unpacking. I know for a lot of those that were listening, we did move this past month or so, and we're still in that unpacking phase, but I have everything set up now, at least for the most part, but not my background. So suddenly my camera turns off. It's because my virtual background disappeared, and I'm not going to let anyone see that, but it is all good. We'll keep it going right with this episode. So
that's right. Keep it rolling.
Well, I know, like, this is where part is that we've had such a great group of folks that have been able to get on this episode with us the last couple of episodes. And, you know, it's one of those things that, especially last time, we had a very technically heavy episode on higher ed, and we were going to keep going things like that. We figured what better way than to go from something very technical to doing something back to kind of like our casual conversations, right? So I have my coffee right here. I'm all set and ready to go and talk about it. Because I think it's something that, you know, Chris, you say it in our introduction, we're going to talk a bit about football, right? We're going to talk about football. Brother. We're going to talk about baseball, right? And I think for a lot of us, especially for me, it's pretty relevant when it comes to sports, because with four boys, just by default, I am coaching all four of them. Well, at least three of them. One of them is just tagging along and soon to be, I'm sure, in that coachable section. But we figured team sports. I know a lot of us had played growing up and things like that too. And I think there's a lot of things we could learn from team sports, especially both from being a team player as well as being a coach. So what are your thoughts on that, Chris?
So, you know, sometimes we call it the game of life, right? And like I think about that show Ted Lasso, where one of the characters says football is life. Football, in this case, being what we in the States call soccer. Yeah. So it's one of those things where I am definitely with you that there's a lot that we can learn about life and leadership from sports. And I think we've mentioned this a couple times, but did you know that the IU Hoosiers are national champions and that they went 16-0 in football? In football.
Yeah. And Fernando was the number one draft pick this year too as well. So Indiana just kept winning this year.
That's right. Like, it just so improbable. Nay, some might say even impossible things are happening in Indiana all over the place. And when I think about sports, when I think about football, because that's the sport that I primarily played when I was on the come up, it was football and it was basketball. You learn a lot about your leadership. You learn a lot about how much leadership matters. When I think about IU football in particular, you can't help but think about Coach Signetti and the various leadership lessons you can learn from him. I have a son and a daughter. My daughter's 15, son's 12. I've coached my son one time, and that was in a flag football league. And it was a ragtag group of boys and one girl. It was a co-ed group. And dude, it was some of the most rewarding time I've had in my sports life. It was a ton of fun. We
Sure.
were kind of like the Mighty Ducks. Eventually, we all kind of came together at the end, and we were able to pull it together and win, quote unquote, the championship. We didn't have a championship game, but we won enough games to say we were
Y'all
the
knew you were
champions
the
in our own mind.
champions. That's all that mattered.
In our hearts, in our hearts. So when I think about football, basketball, team sports, coaching, you can't help but realize that there is just a bonanza of leadership stuff that's in that mix. And when I think about the first sport that taught me about one of the most fundamental leadership lessons, which is you cannot do everything on your own.
Mm.
You can't do it all by yourself. If that has got to be like the most important leadership lesson, because number one, you learn it when you come into leadership, right? That's you as a leader. Your particular purpose becomes to influence people to do the things that you literally can't do because you're finite, right?
Yep.
And you also just continue to learn it over the course of time because you want to overextend yourself and do things that you probably shouldn't be doing for one reason or another. So you have to delegate effectively and all those blocking and tackling things. So when I think about the sport in the moment when I learned that, my brother and I, my brother Will, were 14 months apart.
Okay.
So as you can imagine, we got into a few scrapes when we were on the come up. But we were always so close in age that we would sometimes play on the same high school sports team together. And he for some reason he was 6'3" and kind of lean. I am 5'8" and 3/4 and kind of not. But we both played offensive line for one season. It was a weird season. And there was one particular game in my sophomore year, his junior year, where we were just like getting crushed. Like our offensive line couldn't stop anybody. Our blocking assignments were all wally cobbled, and our quarterback was just getting decimated. Like and you could tell the look in his eye was a mixture of like fear and resignation whenever we get into the huddle. So we get back into the huddle, and I think my side of the line had like missed some kind of assignment, right?
Yep.
So we get back in the huddle, and the quarterback's trying to call the play, and my brother looks at me and he goes, "Hey, what's going on the right side of the line?" And I was like, "Hey, what's going on the left side of the line? You guys are missing it all the time." And we literally almost get into a fist fight in the huddle as two brothers who were not holding it together very well, not super professional. We eventually made up, and I'd like to say we won that game, but we lost like by 7 touchdowns. It was it was rough. But that moment is when I realized if his side of the line doesn't do his job, then I can do my job in spades, but it will not matter. And vice versa. He can hold down his line, but if he can't trust me to hold down my part of the bargain, then we're still cooked.
Yeah.
So it's a revelation. It's a moment. It's very much a duh moment, but it's a moment that is key to leadership, that you have to be able to trust the people that you work with and that you're leading, and they have to be able to trust you, or otherwise this thing does not work at all.
I think that's right. That hits the nail right on the head as well. And, even just from my own background, Chris, I'm sure is a surprise, but I was a little bit bigger in high school. So I was actually, I was a defensive lineman. I was also offensive lineman. I was 295 pounds. I used to bench 420, squat 650. I used to have that little yoke, that thing that kind of bends kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
I guess a couple of things. I was an all county defensive lineman, so I did get best in the county for that, which again, that's not one of the things I always want to highlight in that case, but the whole thing there is just like you were talking about, Chris, even in a sport like football, where you always talk about the star quarterback, the star running back, everyone plays an important role. And that's where, even for what I had to do in that role as a defensive lineman, a lot of times it's just using brute strength to try and break through, but you also had to be disciplined. I still remember we played a very high profile game against another school in North Atlanta where it was televised. And one of those guys that was the quarterback happens to be the head coach of one of the NFL teams here, right? So they're doing well. And I remember playing them on that game, but I still remember every time, especially when it came to, they ran the option. And every time they're like, they called me Tan. They didn't call me Ken. They said, Tan, your assignment is just the quarterback. no matter what. If he goes to the left, you follow him and you tackle him, even if he has the ball or not. Because the whole thing there was everyone wanted to be the hero that did the tackle, right?
Yeah.
And anytime that they got their yardage and everything like that, it's because someone did not follow with their assignment. And that's where part of it's essentially saying, like, even in this case, it's a team effort, even on defense. As defense, you have your different coverages, you have different ways that you're trying to approach it. Flip it over on offense. It's just as important. I played left tackle. And as a part of that, I had specific things. Like if it was a pitch left, that meant that I had to be rolling out as quick as possible, getting the first guy out there and flat backing him if I had to, which I enjoyed doing. That's one of my favorite things. But if I missed it, my running back would lost probably 5 yards. And that's where part of it is. It's a big trust game. It is a team thing where in the whole situation there, usually when the quarterback is getting sacked or the running back loses yardage, a lot of times it's those guys up front that might have missed a play or missed something as a part of it. And then you realize every single position is so important. It's just one of those things where I just think about that in football. That's something for us. There's a lot of times we just think that there's only one person that's important in a role, but it really does take a team effort in the church role, even a nonprofit side. Those folks, the worship pastor, the staff, the senior pastor, everyone is playing a specific role that easily you can see something fall through the crack when people are not doing what has been assigned to them too as well. So
That's right. That's right. For the casual football fans out there who, maybe they see the running back get tackled 3 yards back in the backfield. I think even they have a sense that something went wrong up front. But as offensive linemen, as people that have watched film in the past, you begin to realize, like that's probably because maybe there was someone who missed a defensive realignment.
yeah,
Maybe they didn't communicate well as offensive linemen to make sure that, hey, you're going to pick up the mic, right? And I'm going to pick up this tackle that's in the B gap and all that kind of stuff. You have to be able to communicate, and and you said it, you have to be disciplined.
yeah,
You have to be disciplined. Once you've communicated what you need to do, make sure that you, in a disciplined manner, stick with the assignment that has either been given to you or you've taken on yourself. And one of the things that you mentioned, like, dude, those stats are nuts, by the way. 420 bench press and 650 squat. Like that's
yeah. The only thing
absolute.
that I was scared of doing, I only did 275 was power cleans because I was just always
Yes.
afraid that I would power clean too hard and I'd fall back with it.
Yep.
And so that one, I was just like, they always gave me hard times. Why is it you're always over there, getting all these other things? Yeah, I still made the 1250 club, right? When it came to the overall total squat, bench, and all that. But it was always the power cleans that they were giving me a hard time. I'm like, yo, this is, would you like to get a barbell on your neck too? I wouldn't either. So, anyways, keep going, Chris. I'm sorry.
You're like, I'm not ready to die. I'm a high schooler.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you think about discipline, right? Discipline on the field. But think about how much you are able to actually do on the field because of your disciplined pursuit of
Yeah.
excellence off the field.
Oh, yeah.
And this is I think one of the most important leadership lessons that often goes unsung. That yes, getting up front and being able to give a great speech, a yay rah thing to the troops, or yes, being able to communicate with a person who you're managing, or maybe you're like horizontally on the org chart, saying, hey, do we have an understanding of who's doing what? And then I'm going to, in a disciplined manner, complete my task.
Yeah.
But in a disciplined way, like outside of those moments, what are you doing outside of those moments that are in the limelight, outside of those moments when you're not at the conference or not on stage?
Yeah.
How are you pursuing excellence in those moments? And if we're talking about leadership failures, that's where I see the most misses. Like you're just not getting your leadership reps in. Maybe you're not reading the books. Obviously, I'm going to go that direction. Maybe you're not reading the books. You're not reading the articles. You're not reflecting on your own leadership journey. You're not having the conversations with other mentors. As people of faith, we're not in prayer and in the word. Those kinds of things, the quote unquote weight room, if you will, of leaders. If you're not disciplined in those arenas, it's going to make it very difficult for you to do the things that you as a leader really want to do. You're not going to have the freedom to actually do the things that leaders want to do.
Yeah. And this is where even just considering concept of this, I heard this when I was younger, and I even do it now when I'm coaching my boys with the various sports. Is I say, how you practice is how you play.
Mm,
And it's so important for us to remember that, there's a lot of times in practice you're like, oh, this isn't like really what's happening. But then you realize that it's important to try and do that in practice and give it your all, so
yeah.
that when it actually comes time, you really are giving it your all. And there's a lot of these things, especially even in football. It is an endurance type of sport, right? There's a lot of times at the end of the day, those conditioning drills, I used to hate it, especially as a lineman. Like everyone was like, you look at the running backs and quarterbacks and wide receivers having a full on conversations while they're just jogging, right? And I'm over here
Impossible.
with a fellow, with my fellow gentlemen. We call ourselves Clydesdales, right? We're bigger, stronger, fast-ish, I guess. And we're just like, oh, why are we doing this? But it's because it's trying to help us push through, right? And it's one of those things, that endurance, the ability just to
Mm,
persevere, it really does play a bigger role. Like, I still think about this one time where we had a goal line stand, and there was only 10 seconds left. It was a 4th and goal. And the other team, if they got in there, they would have won, right? This is actually
yeah.
another interesting. This was a playing against Centennial High School when I was south, and Centennial High School has another player on there that now is a head coach too of another team that happened to win the Super Bowl, right? So that kind of gives you like just some interesting things. But I remember during that point, it was like, this is it. This is like where we're all out of breath. We're all feeling that pain, the lactic acid. We have to push through. And they put me up, they switched me over to nose guard instead of defensive tackle at this point, because they wanted us to have that push. And I still remember, just at the end of the day, is like, we all have to really, really work together to stop that. And thankfully we did stop. It was a goal
Mm,
line actual stand, and we won that game. And it was just one of those things that actually sealed our ability to win and go into the playoffs. But it was just like that. It's just like everything that we went through in summer camp, when we had to go out and we had to work out at 5:30 in the morning, practice, do another workout, practice, and then do some other things like conditioning. It really did help us. And I think that's where, even just considering this from a leadership side, of essentially saying you want to continue to challenge yourself. When you start hitting
yeah.
that point of complacency, that's when it becomes concerning, because then you're like, oh, I'm good. I'm in my comfort zone. And you know how many times, Chris, you and I see so many times that a leader at a church, how quickly that tempo and the culture can change when a person is complacent, because they said, oh,
100%.
this is it. Yeah, this is all I got to do now.
And complacency can come from so many different directions,
Yeah.
right? It can come from a self-satisfied, fingers
Yeah.
interlaced and resting on your belly kind of spot. Or it can come from a sense of resignation. Like maybe you've tried and tried and tried, but now you're like,
Yeah.
gosh, I don't think anybody really wants to push forward and
Yeah.
fill in the blank arena in your church or in your nonprofit. Um, and just being able to say, okay, I'm going to get up and try again, or I'm
Yeah.
going to try something different. Or I'm going to get creative, or maybe I'm going to have the hard conversation, or
Yeah.
maybe I'm going to change my tack. Like those are things that do require a sense of resilience.
Yeah.
And to that 4th and goal line stand, a sense of the moment.
Yeah.
I think I've heard this in some leadership talk years ago, but they said that one of the core duties of a leader is to know what time it is
Yeah.
and to describe reality. That moment when you're on the goal line and this is it, that's a moment where leadership really needs to rise up and
Absolutely.
understand the gravity of the moment, that everything really does ride on this. It doesn't, not every moment is like this.
Yeah.
It is not always like this, but this is that moment. And I think really good coaches do that. I think really good leaders do that. They're able to provide people with a context
Yeah.
and to tell people what time it is and what reality is.
Well, I think even just considering from a leadership side, the conversation of a deep bench, you start thinking
Mm-hmm.
about it,
Mm-hmm.
not even just the fact that, oh, you're a second string or anything like that. It's one of those things that just saying that having the ability to have those backups that can help support you. Because you think about, even in football, you think about even now, like from college sports and even NFL, how many people are getting injured and how many someone has to step up after that.
Yeah.
And then they have to take on that role. It's so important, like for myself, again, I'm not trying to put too much of a category myself, but to an extent, I was a good football player. There was probably some aspirations I had to go in the next level, but I got injured. I tore
Yeah.
my MCL, and that really impacted things. And part of that consideration was honestly, you had that mental thought of like, oh, what will the team do now without me for a couple weeks? But that's where part of it is we had a pretty good deep bench that was able to take on that while I was recovering. It's important for leaders to also have that same mindset too of saying, look, it can't be all just on me. We can't just rely on that one person. Because you think about it right now, how many times in many of these churches are you seeing pastoral transitions happening,
Yeah.
turnover, burnout, things like that? And when there isn't someone there that can help really allow that stability and back them up, it really does impact the church. I mean, we've seen churches that have a great deep bench, and with it, a pastor can take a sabbatical for 3 to 6 months, and
Yep.
they're in a good spot still. Things are going well, versus one where now they have to figure out what are we going to do next because we have to fill that position next week. And so that's just one of the things I thought about from this parallel between leadership and football too. What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
100% accurate. When I think about what was the greatest team in NFL history,
Sorry.
the Indianapolis Colts for the first 3 weeks of the
I knew you were about
2025
to throw something at me like that.
of the 2025 season, didn't punt. Their offense was unstoppable. Their defense was playing lights out, and they were one of the few teams in NFL history to go from 8-1 to 8-9. And it was just an epic collapse. But you realize that so much of it had to do with injuries. Their quarterback got injured, lots of defensive injuries, people that just weren't playing 100%. And you begin to realize that the game in the NFL is a game of attrition.
It is.
Who can like actually last until, goodness gracious, January of 2026 and be able to limp into the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
And get hot at the right moment. And it's right. That having the ability to pass things off to other people, to trust other people, to have people of talent and capability around you, it requires, number one, and maybe only, humility. Humility. Those leaders that I know that have lasted the longest, they're the ones that say a lot of we's and r's and not i's and my's. They give leadership away. They don't think that they're the cat's pajamas or the cat's meow, whatever the phrase is, and they're able to say, yeah, I'm not as good at public speaking as so-and-so, or I'm not as good at developing relationships as this guy or this woman, or fill in the blank. And they're willing to give things away and step back. And that's the secret sauce, right? The more you step back as a leader and empower others, your leadership grows.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating thing. And I think that there are many leaders out there that struggle with a sense of, sometimes it's pride, sometimes it's insecurity, or some mixture of the two, where you're just not as willing to give things away because you wonder, well, if I give it away, then what am I here for? And being able to rest secure in who you are.
Well, you think about that phrase, healthy organizations are built to win even when the star has an off day, right? And that in itself is essentially saying like, look, I know you may be an all-star performer, but it's so important to have a good group around you to help support too, right? Now, Chris, I thought you were going to say like one of the best teams, and thankfully, I was going to just put the caveat for the first half was the Atlanta Falcons in 2017, right?
Well, that's true.
It is
28-3.
Forever burned in our memory, and something that, especially as an Atlanta sports guy, it's never going to be forgotten. But it shows you.
Have you looked up the stats
quickly
to see how they could have just knelt the ball over and over and over again?
Another thing about leadership, hindsight's always 2020, isn't it, Chris? Like there's a lot of times I wish that coach over there could listen to me from the TV as I'm yelling at them what they need to do, right? That's I'm just kidding. But like that in itself is another example, even in a difficult side like that, just showing how quickly a team can easily approach things. Like you start thinking about how the Falcons were, right? They had their act together that first half. And I know the Patriots, and our partner in charge is a huge Patriots fan, so I'm sure he's going to love this podcast talking about. But then the second half, how their leader helped rally the troops and still persevere and had the outcome that I wasn't really hoping, but it just kind of shows you how quickly as a team you do essentially approach stuff of saying, look, we got to push through, we got to overcome, And when you have those right folks that are able to help encourage like that, it's so important. And I think that's where the leadership piece is talking about. Yeah, even those stars, they may have an off day, but when they're in it, they have to be in it fully too. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you talk about stars, right? And
yep.
obviously, if you're in the Super Bowl, if you're playing the NFL, if you're playing the NFL generally,
Yeah.
you're a star. If
Oh, yeah.
you're playing in the NFL or you're in the Super Bowl, then you're like one of the stars of the stars, right?
Yeah.
But realizing that talent is not enough,
Yeah.
grit and determination are not enough. There is a leadership component in seeing the world through a leadership lens that is just a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, when I think about the great coaches of all time, like Landry, the Hall of Fame disagrees, but maybe even Belichick, who knows? I guess he was all right. Uh,
Yeah.
7 Super Bowls, who
If he
cares?
just kind of just kind of coasted the last couple of years instead of being in the front page for other things, I'm sure he could have had a better chance. But I'll just leave it at that.
We're getting super controversial on this podcast right now.
I know.
Hot takes. We're just letting it fly. But the great coaches, what they're able to do is they're able to take these very talented performers who may have been seen as superstars in their own rights and get them to perform as a single unit together and not
Absolutely.
focus on their own particular stats. Although you still got some egos, right? That's
You do.
inescapable. But even moving beyond ego, moving beyond hubris, moving beyond pride, which in many cases is rightfully due, it's warranted because they're just excellent,
Yeah.
to thinking about, okay, who we are as a unit, who we are as a team. I remember someone saying that those who are superstar performers don't make great coaches. And they kind of put an asterisk there, and they said Larry Bird was a pretty good coach. He was also excellent. And they said that Larry Bird was kind of a beast of a different stripe because he was such an aw shucks guy.
Sure.
Like he was excellent when he played back in the late 70s and 80s, but at the same time, he was pretty humble about his own performance, and
Sure.
he had a realistic expectation of who he was, and being able to bring that to the table as a player, and gain respect, and then take that to the coaching level and have respect, and then be able to take people and say, hey, yeah, I get it, you're a superstar, but you're playing on a team now, is really key.
Well, you brought up another thing we want to talk about, which is the coaching piece. And I don't know, Chris, if you played baseball in high school and all, but baseball was more like a sandlot thing for me. I was more of a
Yeah.
football guy, but I've had to jump in really quickly with baseball because it's kind of the big thing. And even basketball and all that stuff, I've ended up being a coach. And I don't know if anyone can see this, but they have these little championship rings, right? And I
Little.
guess from a coaching side, I ain't so bad because I got 18 of these combined with my boys. Uh, it is one of those things I jokingly say to my in-laws. I'm like, hey, I know I failed at producing granddaughters, but do you know what I can produce? And they're like, what? Champions. And then I show them like all my rings, right? But no, it's just like you start seeing that, and this is where I don't approach even coaching as to try and be like, I always want to be the one that's going to outwin everyone. But I do think it's so important to even think about the perspective shift from being a player to being one that's coaching, because that is a
Mm.
leadership trait too. And so even talking about baseball, right now my three are playing baseball. My two oldest, one is playing at his age level, one is playing at a different level, another one's playing up with his second oldest brother. But one of the things that ends up being a contentious point, and I think a lot of parents on here may agree, especially if they watch their kid play, is what position on
Uh,
baseball they are playing. Not just on the lineup, because I know a lot of times there's like, oh, batters 4, 5, and 6 are usually the best batters because
that's
they're
right.
clean up and stuff, right? Oh, my kid is number 7, right? They must not be good. But then there's also the consideration of the position outfield, right? I know, and this is where part of it is, a lot of the kids feel like if they go to outfield, that's just kind of the where we put anyone else that just
They're
doesn't want to
banished.
play, right?
Yeah.
We had there's kind of a term. for the younger kids when they are at that age, because a lot of times it's just even trying to corral kids as well as, they have the term, they'd say it, they don't say it really much, but as you can tell, this is a very controversial episode. They call them space cadets, right? Because essentially they call them space cadets. They're looking up at the sky, right? They're looking and dreaming about what they want to do outside of baseball.
That's right, the daydreamers.
Yeah. But, a lot of times they start thinking about, oh, the strongest position is shortstop. The strongest position is first base, because that's the person that has to be able to catch the ball. Third base is just as strong. Anyone in the infield is strong. But then when you start playing all-stars, you realize every position is so important. There are times that my boys, they'll go from being in the infield and rotating out to outfield and all-stars, not because they're bad, but because they have a solid arm and can throw it from center field all the way down to the catcher, the catcher, or, being at left field, they can throw it all the way to first without a bounce, kind of stuff. It's like realizing that every single position has a clear role. You may not see that in rec ball, and you may be like, oh, my kid deserves to be a shortstop or anything like that. The whole thing here we're trying to say is that every position is so important, because even in baseball, you have to win as a team.
Yeah.
There are kids that can hit dingers. I'm not going to talk about my kid too much, but typically if you're hitting it out in the outfield constantly and your outfield is not bringing the ball in, that becomes a home run. It's so quickly. Right. And that's where part of it is saying, like, this is so important for us to realize every position is important too, even in baseball. And even as a coach, you have to help emphasize that. We essentially say, look, it's one of the most difficult considerations for us, even as a coach side. And I know I'm kind of rambling on this piece, Chris, but it's so much on my heart, because I'm about to go coach 2 baseball games this afternoon. Still undefeated. Isn't that awesome? I'm not. You're like, yeah, Ken. Now we're gonna have to talk about humility, right?
Humility. That's right. That's right.
But even in a situation like this, it's like one of the most difficult considerations as a coach you have to think about is, where are you going to line up everyone? And then 2, where are you going to put everyone in their position? And where do you find their strengths? Because you're always going to get feedback. You're always going to get considerations, both good and bad, about what you did. As a leader, there's a lot of times where you have to entrust not just your instincts, but trust the people too. Because after a while, we do all the practices, we're doing all the fielding and all those drills, but come game time, you have to leave it with your team to handle and take it on the field. You're not the one that's out there fielding the balls. You're not the one throwing the ball. You essentially have tried to train them so that they'll be ready to go. So that's what I had a thought on baseball.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first off, dude, kudos to you for being coach extraordinaire. I'm impressed. And that ring was was a thing of beauty.
It's legit.
It is legit. I was like, did someone win the Super Bowl?
Yeah. I was like, I don't remember growing up getting these types of rings. They gave it the coaches too.
They gave you the ones that could easily fold in half if you just applied a little pressure to those medals.
Exactly.
But yeah, baseball to me is still a little bit of a foreign sport. I know it's America's pastime, but man, I'll turn that on a Sunday afternoon and catch some Z's. Like, that's kind of my familiarity to baseball. Not to like cause any more controversy than we already have with the various things we talked about. But when I think about what you just said, that coaches are the ones who have to be able to see how the whole fits together.
Yeah.
And not only that, but be able to communicate that in a way that is understandable and is palatable to both the players and also the various constituencies that coaches have to deal with. In your case, it's the parents mostly, but I'm sure there are others. Now, here's a scoop. Winning covers over a multitude of sins, right? Like if the kids got rings, then chances are the parents aren't going to be deeply upset most of the time. You're still going to have a few. Yeah. Still have a few. But what I've noticed is with coaches I've interacted with our kids, is the minute you start losing, the grousing begins. And usually it hovers around, well, if my kid were playing in fill in the blank position, we wouldn't be in this space, coach. So why don't you get your act together? And I've seen this in Technicolor with our soccer team. So our son Christopher, he switched to a different soccer team, a different travel soccer team this past season. And we won maybe a couple of games. It was rough. And the losses that we had were just so lopsided, like 8-2, 9-1, like those kind of disheartening. but resilience building. We were like Cleveland
Sure.
Browns fans, just building building our tolerance. And then switched to this season. So we just finished the tournament, and
Yeah.
my son's team won it all. It was glorious, and won it in like going away 6-0, 6-0, 4-1, like those kinds of scores. And the coach is the same coach. The players are the same players, same names, social security numbers, dates of birth. But the way he's been able to sort of form and fashion them and coach them up over the course of, last season and this season, you can really see a difference. And,
Yeah.
and in fact, there was one team that we played during this tournament that we beat 1-0. So really close game,
Yeah.
but we had lost to them 6-2 last season.
Wow.
So you can just see in stark relief that we're playing
Yeah.
better together as a team. There's, I'm sure we'll continue to home in on this, but there's trust between the players. They know they're going to be in the right position. And there's trust from the parents to the coach. We did have one kind of tense conversation between one parent and one coach in a very public space early on in the season.
Yeah.
But we got past that. And now we're in a space where I think we're starting to see some of the fruits of that trust and that coach sticking to his guns, coaching up the players, being able to say who needs to go where, and how do I need to make that person really shine in that position so that way it benefits the whole team. So,
Yeah.
you as the all-star coach in baseball, this guy as a long-standing soccer coach here in Terre Haute, Indiana, there is a talent there.
Yeah.
The ability to see something and then stick to your guns, that seems to be like a secret sauce there.
Oh yeah. Despite any of the criticisms that come with it, right? And that's where even on the coach side, what's fun is like, you're just like, hey, I don't get paid enough to do this. I don't get paid at all, right? But it's just like you're there to try and really help make them better. And my whole approach, even, and it's funny, is like even some of the concepts I do on a day-to-day basis with our clients is I always want to leave them better than where I found them. And I've always tried to remind the parents. It was just one, I was like, hey, look, just remember they are still kids at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But two, you're going to notice as long as they stay committed to it, how much better they're going to be from when they first started to when they finished. And that's one of the things that like you start to build on this is that whole repetition, the practice. But even just like you said, working under difficult situations. One of the things that I've also said from my coaching side is that I try to remind the kids, it's like, we're all going to make mistakes. Even some of your best baseball players, the all-star baseball players, the all pro NFL players, they all make mistakes.
Absolutely.
The most important thing is to see what do they do next. And a lot of times you start seeing how quickly, if a person is able to, like I tell them, I always say, brush it off, next play. Brush it off, next play, as in saying, don't let that one mistake define the rest of how your outcomes are. And you'll see those that end up listening to that, how quickly they just refresh and focus on for the next play, versus those that get up in their head and then it becomes also a bit of a spiral. And we've seen that with other teams where they get messed up, they make a mistake. You can tell with that attrition. A lot of times in these tournaments, one of the things you start looking at is you see the other team and just see where are they from their mental side. If they start seeing the fatigue, the breaking down, your goal then is to encourage your team to keep it up. And then it ends up being the case that the team that was supposed to be the one that's going to go undefeated suddenly gets upended by the underdog. It's because the mental game of saying, look, we all make mistakes. We push through it, refresh, redo it as a team, and see how it goes. That's the same case here as well. Even in a ministry side perspective, is that there's a lot of times ministry folks, we make mistakes.
That's right.
Then we get all up in our head about it. And then that impacts the rest of how we perform elsewhere. And that's where it's like, we just have to remind ourselves that we all make mistakes. We're not perfect. Let's reset and refocus, right?
Yeah. And that's so true. And not only in like the leader's self-talk, making sure that the leader can tell him or herself, okay, yeah, I did this thing, or I missed this. I had this conversation, didn't go well. I need to move forward, and I'll try better, and I'll reflect on this particular experience, and we'll see what happens next time. But also the leader being able to tell that to someone else, someone that they supervise, or someone that's horizontal to them on the org chart, like, hey, I know you feel like you messed this up, and truth be told, you did. But that's okay. That's okay. We all mess up, right? These are things that happen. We're human. And as part of being human, it's kind of baked into the pie.
Yeah.
And so what do we do next is what really matters. I read this book years ago called Mindset,
Mm.
and it talks about people that have what's called a fixed mindset, i.e., I'm just this smart slash talented slash athletic, and that's about it. And that's who I am. And then you have people that have a growth mindset, meaning I'm going somewhere. Like, this is who I am today. This is the kind of leader I am today. This is the kind of employee I am today. This is the kind of player I am today. But I'm growing, I'm constantly changing, and I'm getting better. And wouldn't you know it, those that have a growth mindset when it comes to their life and professions and sports, they tend to do better. Maybe
Yeah.
they don't have the same level of skill and talent as someone else does, but they believe they can grow. And I've kind of like thought about that in my own career. The more and more I get locked into a fixed mindset, because that's naturally
Yeah.
where I am. I'm a naturally fixed mindset kind of guy.
Sure.
I can get into that spiraling of, man, no one wants me to be here. No one likes me. I'm not
Woe
good
is
enough.
me. Yeah.
Woe is me. Yeah, the whole Eeyore thing, storm clouds. And you know, I can get there for a little bit, but as I get older, I'm less and less there.
Yeah.
Because I've started to embrace more and more the growth mindset that, okay, yeah, maybe I messed that up and maybe I'm not as skilled and talented as I thought I was. All right, let's keep working.
Let's keep
Let's keep
working.
working. Let's keep
And,
moving.
and I think this is where, even just like whether it's from a coaching position or even as a player position, you start thinking about just kind of your perspective, and even just considering, what position am I actually supposed to play? What systems need strengthening so I can step back? It's essentially like, as a coach and as a player, there's that mutual trust of saying, look, we're all in this whole focus of trying to grow, make ourselves better. That's where, like, I think, one of my biggest encouragements has been for people to go and play a sport, because it does
Mm-hmm.
teach a lot of these concepts, right? You don't have to be the best baseball player, the best basketball player, best football player, best soccer player. But the whole thing there is that you're learning so much just from something with a ball, because you are
Yeah.
learning to trust, you're learning to encourage, you're learning to help people stay accountable because of this commitment that you have. And these are all things that I think even transgress past, or that considered to transition even as you go past sports. Because,
Yeah.
fact of the matter is, sadly, it's like, sure, as much as I thought I was an all like a hot shot kind of guy when it came to my own sports, there came a time that I can't play football anymore. I would get absolutely destroyed now. I'm going to admit that. If I tried and played, football now, it's funny, like every year for the group of guys that I do F3 with, there's a Thanksgiving flag football kind of thing. And
Yes.
man, it's amazing how much more sore I get after that. And we're not even doing full tackle. It's just like, just realizing, like, you reach a point that, hey, you're not gonna be able to play sports like that anymore. It's probably why I take up fishing now.
There you
But
go.
you start saying, I still learned so much from that I could still even utilize in the leadership side. And I think that's why a lot of our folks, you say some of the hardest working folks do come from sports, because they are trying to keep improving. And even in a situation that is not sports related, continuing to ask themselves, how can I bring it up to the next level too, as well?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really good. And you're absolutely right. Like the older I get, the more I realize, like, man, like, the NFL combine, and they bench press 225 pounds, and they see how many times can you do it. Back in the day, I could do it quite a few times.
Yeah.
This side of 40, it is less, significantly less. And you begin to realize, all right, yeah, like my body's not what it used to be, but such is life. That's the way of the
Yeah.
world. How do I take these principles, though, that have been inculcated into me and pass them on to my kids, friends and family members and other people that I have influence with, and here at the firm, your church, all
Yeah.
that good stuff. So yeah, the principles are there.
Yeah.
But it is true that many people that are athletes don't see the principles,
Yeah.
don't take them to heart, and people that are non-athletes can see the principles. It's not just athletics where
Yeah.
where you see these things in action. It just does seem that you can see them in a different way. Maybe I like to say that yes, you can get some of these in other extracurricular activities,
Yeah.
trust, discipline, that kind of stuff. But as far as like in football, basketball, there is something about that camaraderie that develops with your teammates that's just a little bit different, just because of the very physical nature
Yeah.
of the sport. Where you do feel like you're brothers in arms or sisters in arms, and you're achieving a goal together. Can you get that somewhere else? For sure, for sure. But it just does feel a little bit different in team sports.
Well, it's one of those things as we try to wrap it up and think about that, one of the things I think is that core message is like healthy teams beat gifted individuals every time. And it's just like what
Every
you just
day.
kind of talk about there is like, hey, we may not be like the best in everything we do, but as a team, it's one of those things that at least I've seen it there have been some folks in some teams that just have a bunch of average Joes
Mm-hmm.
and they beat a team that had that star player that was a 5-star, at their level because they worked together. It wasn't just
Yeah.
a one person show. It was essentially as a team, they try to do that. And there's a lot of times that even in a church setting, we have to remind ourselves that it's the best healthy teams that beat gifted individuals. I'm sure you guys all
Got a little
realize that
buddy coming in.
a little buddy that just came into as well. And, he's one of my star players that has his own set of rings too as well. TSA would not let him walk through with how much metal he brings for that bling, right? But that's where part of it's just like, I think it's just always a good reminder that even something practical like sports and doing something like that really does help us remember about what it means to be a good leader, and even in a church setting, in a nonprofit setting too.
Amen. Amen. Well, I think about, like, as we wrap up, and as you got to take care of your little dude there, hang out with him for a little bit. Trust is just absolutely pivotal. Like, if you look at the 5 dysfunctions of a team by Lencioni, what's the foundation of that pyramid? It's trust.
Yeah.
Being able to trust each other, trust your teammates to be where they're supposed to be on the field, trust your fellow employees to take care of the tasks that they say they're going to do. So trust is really foundational, whether in sports or in life or in the workforce. Absolutely right.
Well, I enjoyed this as well, Chris, when it came to just being able to chat about sports. A big change from some of the technical stuff we just had recently, but I think this is where part of it's just like, I do love the fact that we can talk about things like this and really have it apply to some practical things like leadership, because it's so important for us just to even step back, realize like it's not always work, but there are certain concepts that we have there that really do get to play a role in what we do, even from a serving perspective too.
I agree, brother. Always a pleasure. And I look forward to chatting about non-sports related items at some point in time in the future.
Likewise, Chris. Take care, man.
You too. This is not a CPA firm. Assurance, attest, and audit services provided by Cape & Krause, LLC. Carr, Riggs & Ingram, and CRI are the brand names under which Carr, Riggs & Ingram, LLC, CRI Advisors, LLC, and Cape & Krause, LLC, and CRI Cape & Krause Advisors, LLC provide professional services. CRI CPA, Cape & Krause CPA, CRI Advisors, Cape & Krause Advisors, Carr, Riggs & Ingram Capital, LLC, and their respective subsidiaries operate as an alternative practice structure in accordance with the AICPA Code of Professional Conduct and applicable law, regulations, and professional standards. CRI CPA and Cape & Krause CPA are licensed independent certified public accounting firms that separately provide attest services, as well as additional ancillary services to their clients. CRI CPA and Cape & Krause CPA are independently owned CPA firms that provide attestation services separate from one another. CRI Advisors and Cape & Krause Advisors provide tax and business consulting services to its clients. CRI Advisors and its subsidiaries, including Cape & Krause Advisors, are not licensed CPA firms and will not provide any attest services. The entities falling under the Carr, Riggs & Ingram, or CRI brand are independently owned and are not responsible or liable for the services and or products provided, or engaged to be provided by any other entity under the Carr, Riggs & Ingram, or CRI brand. Our use of the term CRI, we, our, us, and terms of similar import denote the alternative practice structure conducted by CRI CPA, Cape & Krause CPA, Cape & Krause Advisors, and CRI Advisors as appropriate.